Hey, how's it going? Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a really big fan of Modern Warfare 4. Um, I just really enjoy it. I enjoy the modern, realistic take on warfare. It's better than the newer Call of Duties that just kind of hop around all kinds of crazy, unrealistic BS. I just kind of like, the modern warfare elements, the whole war itself is exciting enough. We don't need to hop around like fucking superheroes. So I've been relatively, well, actually not relatively, holding a reserved anticipation, excitement maybe, for the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare. So when I came across this article, Call of Duty Modern Warfare Impressions Taking War in a Frightening Direction by Dean Takashi, I was kind of taken aback. Kind of like, what's his problem? So we're gonna kind of hang out, play a game, and we're gonna talk about this because it's doesn't make sense. Not to me. I'm not gonna read all of it. I'll just kind of hop around to, some of the more important parts. But it starts out with I've been a Call of Duty fan from the first game in 2003, but I have never wondered about this question before until now. Should this particular game, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, be made? The small glimpse I've seen of it so far tells me no. Activision is announcing today that Modern Warfare will ship on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC on October 25th. It's an important game for a corporation that has been weakened by the loss of Destiny, its Destiny franchise, and the fizzling of Skylanders. To date, Call of Duty has sold more than 300 million games. Yeah, it's a popular franchise. I mean, even when it slid downhill for people like me, I no longer supported it at that point, but it's a popular franchise nonetheless. The publisher's Infinity Ward Studio showed a part of the single player campaign for an upcoming Call of Duty, for the upcoming Call of Duty installment Modern Warfare, blah blah blah. And it has scenes and gameplay that were very disturbing to me. Well, that's the thing. People each have their own level of disturbing. Society's not going to look at the world through the lens of what you find disturbing or not, and no one should. I shouldn't have to look at the world through the lens of what you find to be appropriate. You can have your opinion, that you have every right to that opinion, but I have every right to think that your opinion is just dumb. I was quite uncomfortable as I watched a gameplay demo of Modern Warfare, which is more than just a remake of 2007's Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. The demo, which will be shown at the Electronic Entertainment Expo E3 game trade show in June, has two parts. In both cases, the safety of civilians comes into question. Dude, what do you think happens on police and military operations? The safety of civilians is always in question. That's why when a civilian is accidentally killed in a war, they're called collateral damage, casualties of war. Yeah, it's not intended, but it happens. Sorry. Infinity Ward developers got up on the stage at a recent event in the studio's headquarters in Southern California. Then they showed a press group the scenes. They warned us that the game would be mature, authentic, and gritty. No longer would they be jumping around like superheroes. It's grounded in a realistic combat and a complex world that mirrors our own. Activision says the game has an incredibly raw, gritty, provocative narrative that brings on unrivaled intensity and shines a light on the changing nature of modern warfare. Okay, that's actually kind of a good thing. It's going in a different direction. They're not taking this dirty, ugly thing, war, and polishing it up. So everyone can be like, oh, war, fun, it's awesome. Join the army. If it's anything like this, it's going to be totally awesome. Just kick back, drink Mountain Dew, and shoot people. No, it's not how it works. It's more emotionally damaging. I mean, anyone with two brain cells, whether they, have been there or not, civilian, military, anyone with two brain cells knows that war is a damaging experience for a lot of people that go there, and it's been that way. I would assume probably forever, but more recently, I mean, back in World War II, it was like that. And guys came home, and you hear stories all the time. If you like look for them, of guys who came home from World War II and they couldn't adjust. They couldn't outrun the war. Some became alcoholics. I had relatives who served in World War II, and the story is that they came home and they were alcoholics because of it. So the idea that a realistic game should exist, that it's too realistic, it's too visceral, that's again, you can almost see the person's point, but it's a dumb point. All right, it's just stupid. All right, I see what this person is thinking, and they're saying that, oh well, it's a little too realistic, it's a little too close to home, it's a little too visceral. But you know what? That's kind of what gamers, especially Call of Duty players, have been saying. Yo, give me something that I can get invested to. Give me something with a campaign that I care about. Give me something that's nowadays that's realistic, that mirrors the world that we live in. Something that I can turn on and I can feel connected to, because that's what video games are. They're a connection to something. And whether it's a character or a story or anything like that, it's the idea behind it, right? The premise is that the rules of war have changed. It's not black and white, it's gray, with a fine line between right and wrong. Yet undoubtedly this gritty single-player campaign will be coupled with multiplayer combat where killing is a sport. If you put these things together with extremely realistic human characters, it becomes even more disturbing. Combat not being black and white, kind of being a gray area, has been that way since Vietnam. Technically, you could probably even venture all the way back to like World War II. Now, multiplayer, yeah, it's combat for sport. You're having fun. You're playing a game that, truthfully, is probably no different than a virtual version of paintball. It's really all you're doing. Your virtual version of paintball, a lot less activity. Arguably, that's probably worse. I mean, at least paintball gets you outside. But truthfully, paintball is simulated killing for sport. You're shooting at somebody else for the sport of it. Same thing with airsoft. And it's not really a problem. I mean, most people realize that it's a game. It's nothing more. And I feel like the person who might have wrote this kind of has a low impression of the average gamer or the average person who might encounter this. It goes on to talk about things that developers have said. The battlefield has never been less defined. Enemies more often than not don't wear uniforms. That means collateral damage, civilians. It's a greater part of the equation now. Is a greater part of the equation now than it's ever been. Okay, I wanted to make sure I was reading that right. Those situations are what our heroes are up against. And he's not wrong, okay? Enemies more often than not don't wear uniforms. A uniform indicates that you're on a side, that you're on a certain team. And in a traditional warfare, or warfare event, like two armies going against each other, yeah, uniforms indicate a team, and that's standard operating. But when you're a smaller force, like guerrilla warfare, wearing a uniform doesn't really help you out, because if they spot you and they think that might be a hostile, generally speaking, armies have better trained soldiers. Armies with better trained soldiers are generally equipped with soldiers who can shoot further distances than that of an average civilian. The point is that wearing, or I wouldn't say civilian, I guess what would be what, like guerrilla warfighter? I don't know. The point is that wearing civilians' clothes and whatnot allows for the quote-unquote bad guys to operate in a manner that is less likely to get them killed before they have a chance to do whatever they're going to do. And yeah, it's the world that our troops are up against. That's just the cold hard facts. I'm sorry that, whoever wrote this doesn't seem to really like that fact, but unless you can talk the enemy into wearing a uniform so they're easier to spot for our troops, and thus making it no longer an equation in the real world. Sorry, deal with it. That's life. Take your complaint somewhere else. Modern warfare is about characters thrown into moral conflict under the pressures of war. See, now that could be really interesting, and that's actually a good thing. I mean, one of the best games I've ever played was Spec Ops: The Line. It's moral conflict under the pressures of war. He often had issues of dealing with civilians and civilian collateral damage by his own hand, sometimes intentionally, under the assumption that he was fighting hostiles. And yeah, Walker, I think was that character's name. But anyway, this is neither here nor there. And that's maybe one of the best games I've ever played. They just have to make sure that the meaning of the game is a little bit more obscure. Because if they're right in your face with it, then what's the point? I don't need a game, pontificating to me like the writer of this article thing seems to be doing, pontificating the right and wrong nature of the world or warfare. I don't want a game to do that. I want a game to tell me a story, and a story that allows me to decide, the morale of it, because that's kind of what, again, Spec Ops: The Line did. I had multiple different ways I could look at it. He did terrible things, but he was trying to accomplish his mission, or at some point, did he cross the line? And that should be up to the gamer. That's where good games, become good games. They allow the gamer to make a decision for him or herself. He kind of talks about something that one of the developers, I guess, says. I don't know, I think it's stupid. The developer basically says, Taylor and I, as storytellers, all we ever really want to do is make players feel something. I remember playing the first Modern Warfare in the AC-130 mission. The aerial combat, you're firing down enemies below with thermal vision. There is no consequence. They cannot hurt you. All you are hearing, deadpan, is lots of little pieces. That feeling I found profoundly uncomfortable. It felt too easy. It felt dishonorable. It felt wrong. I understood I was protecting my allies. I understood why this tactic is used in real life. It made sense. For the first time, I felt why it is emotionally For the first time, I felt why it is emotionally uncomfortable. Yeah, that's what he said. Dumb quote. And then every time I saw it on the news from then on, I thought about that experience. The game made me think about the real world in a completely different way. First things first, I'm not sure AC-130s really make it on the news with their operations all that often. Because last I knew, the AC-130 was kind of like a special operator support plane a lot of the time. So, yeah. And no, that's the point of air support. Air support's supposed to be fairly safe for the air support, but it's supposed to protect the ground troops, as this person said that he understood the point of it. It's not dishonorable. The enemy would use the same thing if they had the ability. It's, it's war. It's not supposed to be fair. I think Patton said something along the lines of, the point of war is not to die for your country, it's to make the other son of a bitch die for his. So, I don't know, I just thought it was a stupid point to make. I understand that this person felt uncomfortable that the little itty bitty specks on his screen that were hostiles didn't really have much of a chance to fight back against an AC-130, but again, oh well. They go on, he talks a bit about the research. The next segment is, I'm not going to read out the title. I'll put it on the screen just because I don't want YouTube to get all pissy with me. Squirting unarmed women or bad guys. Yeah, I'll stick with that one. Okay. In the first scene, the bad guys attack central London. A team of British SAS operatives, some badass dudes, gathers in the front of a townhouse that they suspect harbors a bad guy group. In a manner that resembles a raid in Rainbow Six Siege, They gather together to storm the house. The music is menacing, the military chatters by the book, and the people look so real. If you pass by a TV with someone playing the game, you could easily mistake that game for a segment of a documentary about the war in Syria. Okay, is that a bad thing? So it looks real. That's kind of the point. The idea is that people want a realistic warfare game. They're on point. Congratulations. They're doing what the consumers want for once. The commander warns that there may be non-combatants on the scene, so check your shots. The camera's view is very close as the soldiers kick their way or vault into the house with their guns drawn. The sound of breaking windows and gunfire is stark. They smash the door on the lower level while another soldier goes through an upper story window. A dog barks. What is this guy, a court transcriber? I mean, seriously. Yeah, you explained it to me. You want to try to paint me a picture that it's supposed to be this like shocking thing. It sounds like almost exactly like what a SWAT team would do. Not that shocking, bud. Sorry. As with Rainbow Six, the important choices that you must make as a soldier is to move into the room quickly and decide fast who to save and who to shoot. I do not play this mission, but the Infinity Ward staff played it for us in a dark theater. Alright, yeah, that's what SWAT teams have to decide every time that they breach. This isn't really all that uncommon of a thing, or really even all that's scary. When SWAT teams assemble somewhere, they generally have to bring other, like regular cops to keep crowds back, because people want to watch. People are like, heck yeah, let's watch that. SWAT teams do that all the time. I'm not sure what the statistic of it is, but yeah, that's a fairly common thing. The game differs from other gritty combat games based on who is in each room. The characters appear to be the basic group of people that our militaries have been combating for a while now, in mostly civilian garb. Yeah, that's kind of part of being not noticeable, which I guess is the goal. But those characters include both men and women. So is that the problem? Is that they include women? So what? Who cares? Grow up. Women can just as easily pull a trigger or press a button, which it's not just men. One of the women runs for a baby. Fortunately, the developers told me later, you cannot shoot that woman or the baby. She surrenders. Yeah, I mean, okay. So is that what matters, that you might have to pop a woman in the game? I mean, but in another room, a woman runs for a gun. She prepares to shoot. You have to kill her. Your silenced weapon makes muffled noises, and bodies hit the floor. Up close and personal. The same goes for other armed men in the place. In another room, shots are fired through the door. Before you can respond, one enemy is wounded and gurgles his last breath. A woman cries in the background. One of your soldiers goes down. You fire into the door or fire into the wall. The enemy goes down. That's some fantastic writing. That's why reading court transcripts is boring. Yeah, so what, dude? Sounds like a standard SWAT breaching game. That sounds really no different than Rainbow Six. How is this any different than Rainbow Six? Because I guess what? In Rainbow Six, the operators are equally men and women. I'm not sure what the problem is. You shoot at women in Rainbow Six Siege as well. So what's the problem? Why does it matter? Oh, is it because they're wearing military-ish garb? Is it because they're, in this game they're apparently not running around with a thigh holster and a tactical vest and ACUs or MARPAD or ATACs or multicam or whatever? Is that the problem? Because if that's the problem, that's a really fucking stupid problem to have with a game. Just so what if it's realistic? the only way it can be too realistic is if they maybe cross some sort of decency line, which this isn't it for most people. You know, it might be for this guy who wrote this, but again, uh, I refuse to look at the world through the filter of his feelings. So there's that. But I'm not really sure what the problem is. It doesn't make sense, but let's go on. And in the final room, you confront an unarmed woman. She tries to divert you. She moves despite your warnings to stop. She then grabs how do I put that? Something that makes things that go boom, go kaboom. The little button, you know. Because again, let's try to keep it decent for YouTube. You have to shoot her. Yeah, that means she's not really unarmed by the point that you shoot her. She's reaching for a weapon. That's a good shoot. That's a clean shooting. That's the entire point. It's a clean, good shoot. And also, just because they're wearing civilian clothes, enemies that make a hostile action like that, like reaching for a little button that makes things go kaboom, that's not a civilian. That's an enemy combatant. This is the nature of modern combat, the developers say, but this should not be a part of a modern video game in my opinion, given the thin line between civilians and warriors, and given the impression that it creates in our world, which is driven by social media, sound, and which is driven by social media, sound, and video bites. It looks so much like you are killing innocent civilians, and if you make one mistake, you are. Dude, get over your fucking feelings on this. Alright? If you make a mistake, you accidentally shot a civilian, what does that have to... In Grand Theft Auto, you can mow down civilians by the thousands. You can run them over with trucks, cars, you can slide into them, you can traditionally go and cut them down. Why is this any different? Why? Give me a reason. Is it because this is a military game? Is it because it makes it look like the military is popping off innocent people? Because, yeah, I'm sure, actually, yeah, it's happened. Both intentionally and unintentionally. It happened intentionally in Vietnam. So a group of army soldiers, I think it was a company, just went fucking nuts, and I think they, like, slaughtered an entire village. I'm not sure what happened to them. I don't know if they were all tried on that. I want to say they were. But, and it's happened unintentionally back then all the way to now. It's just what happens, okay? Just because they're wearing civilian clothes. And by the way, back in Nam with that massacre, they were legitimately innocent civilians, okay? So if you want to complain about something, complain about a mission like that. That would have been more closely resembling the mission in, what was it, Modern Warfare 2? But complaining about this, complaining about enemy combatants dressed like civilians is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. I mean, that's like complaining because you can shoot a civilian in GTA, because guess what? That's legitimately shooting a civilian. So unless you're going to complain about that, I don't want to hear it. I'm told the narrative of the story, which is generally secret, will explain the context for that scene. But as I've seen it, I found it profoundly disturbing and unjustifiable. Again, filter of your emotions, don't care. After showing us this scene, the developers at Infinity Ward went right into a presentation where they said, "We'd like to talk to you about the star of the game, which is the weapons. Sadly, I do not have pictures of this to show you." Okay, so the star of any Call of Duty game is always the weapons. That's the point of it. I mean, that's the whole idea of Call of Duty. Those are the stars of the game because that's what changes the gameplay. That's what kind of makes it different, fun. You know, I want to use this one, I want to use that one. That's what you're doing it for. That's a star of the Call of Duty game because that's what will end up kind of most prominent later when you play the online. All right, and frankly, it's kind of what nails down the story. If you play the story as a Marine and you're running around with a G36C or G36K, that's kind of fairly unrealistic to the reality that a Marine would more than likely be carrying an M4, maybe an M16 or something like that, right? So, next segment he comes into, and I'm probably not going to read all this, is should these scenes be in the game? This modern warfare will be controversial, probably less than you think. Because not everyone is going to look at it the way you do. Not everyone cares, because at the end of the day, they might be dressed like civilians, but if they're doing hostile intent, hostile actions, they're an enemy combatant. That's it. That's simple. You might accidentally pop a civilian, but that's happened in a lot of war games. Oh, accidentally shot a friendly, accidentally shot a civilian. It happens. Get over it. And it goes on. And it might just be popular because of this controversy. Again, I don't think it's going to be controversial. If the company can weather the storm of criticism, it's going to be a very, very, very small, weak little storm. I would be shocked if it was something massive and controversial, because most people, they don't think like this guy. And if they do, that's just a really, really sad pity for the world, in my personal opinion. But it would be a very cynical path to popularity. I would encourage the developers to examine whether they should include the scenes I've seen. Sure, it is realistic, and things like this happen in the world. And that's the end of that paragraph. He doesn't say, sure, it's realistic and things like this happen in the world, but I think it's wrong for such and such a reason. He never really elaborates on why he thinks it's wrong. Just say he thinks it's wrong, but doesn't really go into detail on why. I mean, he kind of hints and nibbles around the edge, but that's it. One good question is, are these scenes really so bad? We've seen worse in modern movies, video games, and even on YouTube, as those who depict the horrors of war try to outdo each other. Yeah, that's kind of the point. I mean, again, people play war games because they want to be dropped into a world that they otherwise wouldn't or couldn't experience. Because let's face it, number one, don't have a time machine. I can't go back and, experience World War II. And number two is a lot of people don't really have the desire, the willpower to do things like become SEALs. I mean, you got to really want that, and most people don't. And games like this kind of allow them to experience a story, fictitious, generally speaking, that a SEAL might. Or I mean, just this fictitious, like SEAL type story, or, special ops type story, that they wouldn't experience in their normal life because they don't have the desire to put themselves through the misery to become one. He just writes one sentence, this one feels worse. Alright, bud, again, your feelings, your perception, your opinion, don't care. I mean, you can have it, but it's wrong. My reaction is not that the developers should censor themselves or someone should censor them. My question is about choices. We can make this kind of game, but should we? So now you're trying to take a moral high ground? This guy's trying to literally take a moral high ground with me? You serious? You fucking with me? Trying to take a moral high ground. Well, didn't see that coming. Yeah, we should, because there's a market share for it. People want to play it. If people didn't want to play it, people wouldn't buy it. They wouldn't make it. Call of Duty would not be one of the most prominent and well-known game franchises in the world if people didn't want to play them. He goes on to say, I would like a Call of Duty game that makes me think hard, feels intense, and is fun to play. I usually shrug off the criticism from people who say these games are too violent. As far as I can tell, you still play as the good guys in this game. So what's your problem? I mean, really, what is the problem? What is the problem that this person who wrote this has? Because seems like they delivered. It's a game that makes people think hard, feels intense, and is fun. Seems like it'll be fun to play. So seems like they're checking all the boxes. It seems to me like the problem that this individual has is that some of the bad guys are bad girls, and they're all not wearing military uniforms. So that's a no-no. Get over it. It's a real world. Grow up. Suck it up, Buttercup. The first sentence of this paragraph is so stupid. This game will give fuel to those who hate. Yeah, I doubt that. And if someone takes a game that seriously, that they use it as fuel for hate, then they got issues. That simple. If this game goes down the wrong road, that would be a shame, as there are elements of high quality art in this effort. There may very well be good context to the story of this game, but Activision and Infinity Ward aren't saying much about the story yet. The developers say that it's going to be something like Jaws, not Saw. So they want something intense, something that's heart pounding, something that's, a thriller that's not just slasher for the sake of being a slasher, okay? I was never a fan of Saw. Why? Because I thought Saw was torture for the sake of torture. That's all it is. It's torture porn. That's it. Jaws was bloody and gory, but it was bloody and gory at the right moments. It was intense and it was, well, scary. It felt real. People were afraid to go swimming after that movie. That's why that movie's generally considered to be a masterpiece. So if they really follow that and they make it a realistic game, this game could be considered to be maybe one of the best games, at least of the 2010s. It could end up being a masterpiece. I don't know. I generally reserve my expectations when it comes to Call of Duty, but I'm optimistic. Cautiously optimistic, to be very clear. Modern Warfare is bloody, but it's not a sea of blood spraying everywhere. But sometimes the medium is the message. Sometimes the horror of a particular scene outweighs the point you're trying to make. There may be a message in what the developers intend, but it might be overshadowed. Yeah, no, it's not. The point of the game is to drop you into the horror of what our troops may or may not be encountering. That's the entire point of the game. Just because this person has a specific view on life doesn't mean everyone else looks at life through the filter of their eyes, through the filter of their fucking feelings. Get over it. I mean, the game seems like it already hit a medium. It's gonna be bloody, but it's not a sea of blood spraying everywhere. That's kind of the middle ground. I think of the anti-war movie Apocalypse Now, which has a memorable Ride of the Valkyrie scene where a mad colonel orders an attack on a Vietnamese village so his guys can surf, which, and he has a typo here, was an excellent commentary on the insanity of war. But it was executed so well as a combat scene that, in my opinion, it probably inspired a lot of young people to enlist in the military. A couple things on that. Number one, I haven't seen Apocalypse Now, and I couldn't tell you how long. Literally couldn't tell you. Really long time. And I'm pretty sure they had orders to take that beach, to secure that village. I don't think the colonel just decided, hey, I want to go surfing here. Let's mount up, guys. Let's hose down this village. And I'm pretty sure they encountered hostile contact from at least VC. So even if that was the case, as far as the war effort goes, they were doing their job. So there's that. But I believe that they were given orders. And then after securing the beach, they just like, hey, let's go surfing. We won. I don't think it was what is kind of suggested. That, I mean, again, I could be wrong, but I don't think a colonel was like, hey, I want to go surfing. Let's wipe out this village and call in an airstrike. I'm going to order an airborne assault and an airstrike so we can go surfing. That might be a bit on the extreme. But as I said, I could be wrong. I haven't seen that movie in forever. This is supposed to be a video game. It will undoubtedly have a multiplayer element where players shoot at each other for fun and have a hell of a time doing it. That's when we'll see that the guns are the star of the show and the incongruity of it all will be clear. What's the incongruity? That the single player is serious and gritty and emotionally, like, potentially trying for some people or most people, that it will make you question your actions, and then you hop online and you're blasting people for fun. That's kind of the point. It's the point of online. The story is supposed to tell you a serious, dark story. It's pretty much most, if not every, military game, Battlefield, a lot of your earlier Call of Duty, serious story, online play, shoot at each other for fun. That's kind of the idea. The online play is supposed to give the game a long-term viability, so players can have long-term entertainment, and more than likely Activision can have a long-term profit from the online. So yeah, that's the point, to make the online play fun, but to make the campaign to be a good story. And generally speaking, good military stories are generally very serious, realistic military stories. You don't believe me? Go look at Battlefield 5. See how many people like them shitting on World War II. No one liked it. Well, most people didn't like it. Most honest people didn't care for it. I gotta stop talking about this because this is just getting dumb. Um, the overall dramatic effect of the intense scenes should be memorable and artistic, not gratuitous or base. The developers can fall back on the argument that this is our world. The game is ripped from the headlines, but this puts us on a slippery slope towards a lot of things. Yeah, no, it doesn't. Okay, anyone who thinks that this game puts us on a slippery slope, it's no more so a slippery slope than any of the last Call of Duties, than Grand Theft Auto. It's that slippery slope is not a slippery slope. That slope is made of like grip tape comparatively to other things that can put people on a literal slippery slope, like alcohol abuse can turn into a real slippery slope. Now, granted, that's not an art or a media, but you kind of get the point. There are real things for people to be concerned about in their life that can put them on a slippery slope, and a video game story is not one of them. So let's try to focus on the things that are actually a problem in the world, huh? The preview requires us to trust the developer, but in this case, Infinity Ward has not delivered as well as its sister studios Treyarch and Sledgehammer Games. The studio keeps skating closer, not towards, to the. I'll restart that sentence. The studio keeps skating closer to the edge in order to make us uncomfortable. We can view that cynically as gamers, but we don't necessarily trust Infinity Ward to deliver an elevated experience given the pressures it is under. I actually trust them just fine to deliver an elevated experience, because that seems to be what they're doing, because that seems to be what this person is complaining about. They're delivering an elevated, realistic experience, and this person doesn't happen to like it. Why? Because, it has bad girls in it, and they aren't wearing military uniforms. I don't see thigh holsters or tactical vests or ACUs or MARPAT or ATACs or is that what it's called? I don't know. I think so. Or multicam or helmets or anything that tells me that they're in the military. They're wearing civilian clothes, and that is wrong. Get over it, okay? That's the dumbest argument I've heard, to say that a game is wrong. It's trying to start a controversy where there is no controversy. All right? Because that's just stupid. Just plain, flat out fucking stupid. I mean, I'm at a loss for words. This article's making me fucking lose brain cells. All right, where was I? Yeah, that's stupid. All right. It's an elevated experience because it takes us to a place that the last Call of Duty games, for the most part, haven't taken us to. I would say probably the most realistic Call of Duty game for our generation, was Call of Duty 4. And what's the problem? Now, because the bad guys aren't running around in camouflage, that's a problem, and some of the bad guys are bad girls. To sum up what I literally just went over, is that the problem? Is that what this person is saying, that it's sliding us closer because the people are not wearing military uniforms? Jeez, that's maybe the dumbest thing I've heard all month. I'm not kidding. Sometimes you have to judge something on just what your eyes tell you, and my vote is that the single player campaign should not ship with these scenes. Again, filter of this guy's emotions is not how a society should live. Everyone has a different standard on what is right or wrong, and generally speaking, societies that live by the filter of someone else's emotions are less equipped to deal with the world than societies that don't. The point I'm making is that the next Call of Duty game is actually something that has potential to be fairly decent. and to deliver that elevated experience, and to complain because of the emphasis that those paragraphs put on the fact that some of the bad or hostiles were female and that they were dressed in normal clothes. If that's the problem with the game, I'll take that problem any day over a studio trying to re-envision a real war that was the most bloody and devastating conflict in the history of humanity for the sake of conforming. I don't know, for like what, the sake of conforming to modern worldviews. Yeah, I'm gonna take this realistic outlook on things rather than a game where they decide, hey, well, World War II, great lot of stories are in there, but we're gonna rewrite them. Yeah, I'm gonna side with Infinity Ward on this because that seems to be where the action and the quality is going to be coming from. And if this is the worst complaint that anybody can come up with, I don't think it's going to be a problem. I can understand why people don't like journalists anymore because this is just fucking stupid. I'm done. I can't talk about this anymore. If anyone watched this and actually stuck around for what's probably going to end up being like 40 minutes listening to me bitch, moan, and rant, I'm sorry I went on for so long. Have a great day.